My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. All right, many of you have requested this watch, and I finally have one. This is the Casio Edifice EFR-S108D, and it's the little cousin. You can see the styling is very similar. It also has a sapphire crystal, as another watch I reviewed, which was the EFR-S107D, and I'll put a link to that review up in the corner now. However, I just felt that one was a little bit too big, and this one is smaller. So the 107D is 41 millimeters. This one's more like 38 to 39 millimeters, and I just felt like it was more my size. So I finally got my hands on one. I was having trouble finding one from a US vendor. I finally just broke down and bought one from Europe. Probably paid a little bit more than I should have and had to wait for it to get shipped over. But anyways, here we are. We have it, and we're going to do the review. So as always, we're going to do specifications, then pros, cons, and then if I think this watch is worth the money. Before we start, my views from subscribers have creeped up to 6% from a mere 5%. So if you're watching the channel and you're enjoying it and you haven't subscribed, I would love if you would do so. Thank you so much. So starting with the case. Now there's these pronounced crown guards, and then there is a pronounced section here kind of to mirror the crown guards. So technically it's about 40 millimeters across, but if you measure just from the bezel, it's 38 millimeters. And then it's only about 45 millimeters lug to lug, but keep in mind it does have these end links that are quite pronounced, so it does make the lug to lug length more like 50 millimeters. It's quite thin. It's only 8 millimeters thin, which is really nice and helps it wear extremely comfortable. And then the lug width opening, unfortunately, is 16 millimeters, but we'll get more into that in a minute. Now, the case finishing is really excellent. The Casio Edifice case finishing is very impressive. You have a brushed finish across this bezel, but then the edge of it is all high polish. And then the top of the case is also brushed. You have those interesting screws there, kind of like on the S107D, but they kind of tuck them under the bezel on this model. And then it's brushed on the top and brushed on the sides, but you have this really nice high polish chamfered edge all around the side of the watch on both sides. So there's a lot going on with this case. It's really well finished, and I love kind of all the angles and mixed surfaces. They really knocked it out of the park on this case. Which brings me to the bracelet. So everything's starting okay. It's 22 millimeters. It tapers down to 18 millimeters. It's a mixture. It's mostly brushed surfaces, but you do have some high polish accents in the middle there, and the sides are high polished. There's a double push deployant clasp here. It's just pressed metal, and you do have the Edifice signature there and the Edifice logo. 3 micro positions. Sizing is accomplished with just standard push pins, and you have hollow end links. However, therein lies part of the problem. You might be able to see here the lug width opening is only 16 millimeters here. They did this weird thing with the end link where only that middle section goes into the lugs, so you have a very short spring bar there, and it's not going to be easy to change straps. So you're going to have to like the Casio Edifice bracelets. Now, I think they're fine. They're a little bit jingly, but they're serviceable. When you wear them on the wrist, they're light and comfortable, but they get the job done. But just keep in mind on this particular model, you're probably not going to be able to switch out the bracelet. So we just have a snap-in case back here, some information, Casio Edifice, the logo, sapphire crystals, and 100 meters of water resistance. So some nice water resistance on this watch. This is powered by the Casio module 5359. So that's going to be plus or minus 20 seconds a month. It's going to have a 3-year battery life. It has the date, and then when the power gets low, the second hand will jump 2 increments. So once every 2 seconds to let you know that it's time for a new battery. So just a push-pull crown here, but it is signed, and you're probably not going to be able to make it out, but it has some nice concentric circle finishing on the end of that crown there. And then there's a nice step that has high polished into the knurling of the crown, which is all high polished. So some nice detail on the crown kind of goes along with the finishing on this case. There's just a lot of nice little details on this watch overall. So pulling in on that dial, it's going to look matte black from many angles and lighting conditions, but when you get the bright light on it, it actually has a graining finish, kind of like a wood grain. It's really interesting, and it was similar on the Casio 107D as well. I think it's a little bit less pronounced on this one overall. You have the triple branding at the 12 o'clock. I'm not a huge fan of the Edifice, Casio, and the logo. They could have probably done without 1 or 2 of those, but it's fine. You have the date at 3 o'clock. They did a good job kind of tucking it in there. The date wheel matches, and they didn't clip that indice very much. And then you have some text at the bottom there, sapphire, water resistance, and 100 meters. I like this handset, the stark white outer edge of the hands makes this watch really legible. And then on the back end of the watch there, it's actually high polish and it's gabled, so it will catch light on either sides. That minute hand is plenty long, one of my pet peeves. It's going all the way out to the chapter ring. Love to see that. And then the second hand is gold, and it does kind of match they wrote Sapphire in kind of that same color on the dial. Second hand is also quite long, and you can see here the registration on this one is perfect. I've had very good luck with Casio quartz watches where the registration of the second hand is usually, if not spot on, pretty dang close. One thing that's absent here that I loved on the larger one, the S107D, was the 12, 3, 6, and 9 indices actually had these green edges that matched the green second hand. They did not go that way on this one. There's no change of color. Like, to be the same pattern, it would have been gold on the edge of those indices, which kind of might have been cool, but this is a more cleaner effect, I think. But I think I did actually really like the green on the 107D. As mentioned, there is lume on the hands and the indices. However, it's very weak and it fades very fast. I don't find it very useful. It's another pet peeve of mine. I think if you do lume, you should do it right and bright. And if you are not going to do it right, you could just leave it off altogether. However, keep in mind there is lume on here. It's not going to impress you if you are a lume junkie like I am. And here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. I think it wears great. I think it wears maybe like a 38 or a 39. There's a lot of bezel there, so the dial is a bit smaller. The proportions on this I think are just perfect. You have that nice angle down on the lugs, which helps it kind of conform to the wrist, and then it's so thin, it's only like 8 millimeters thin, that it just kind of hugs right to your wrist there. So very comfortable watch, this one. So pros and cons. Well, for pros, I really like the case design on this one. You have a really interesting combination of high polish and brushed surfaces. The finishing is really good at this, especially at this price point. The case is just really well done, and I think it's a cool design. Second, you have that sapphire crystal. That's always welcome. I love sapphire crystal. You just don't really have to worry about scratching it, and it's a great deal at this price point especially. And then third, for me personally, is the size. I love the other S107D, but at 41 millimeters, I thought it was a little bit too big. This one is the perfect size for me. So if you like watches a little bit on the smaller end, consider this one over its larger cousin. So cons. That bracelet integration might be a huge deal breaker. You're going to have a very difficult time finding an alternative strap for this, so you're going to need to be okay with the Casio Edifice bracelets. If you've owned one before, you know what I'm talking about. I think they're fine, but they're not the highest quality in the world, but they are serviceable. The second con here is the lume. The lume is just a disappointment. I wish they would do better lume on these, but it is what it is, and that is what you are going to get on this watch. Third, they're hard to get in the USA, so I've been looking for this watch, and I have not been able to find it. Like I said in the intro, I just broke down and ordered it from Europe. So keep an eye out. Maybe they'll come to the US. And I saw one on Amazon, but it looked like it had international shipping, so I don't think they're quite here yet. So is this watch worth the money? So if you can find one that's less than, I would pay less than $100. You know, for the S107D, I think I got that for like 90 bucks. That's, I think, about right. I think that represents a pretty good value, especially considering you're getting that sapphire crystal. I paid over $100 for this, but I just really wanted to get it in for review, so I probably paid too much. Just remember, the major caveat on this one is going to be that bracelet integration. You're going to have to like the strap. Now, at the end of the day, personal input, I do think this one is worth the money, but I really wish there was a hybrid of these two watches. I really liked the indices with the green flare that kind of matched the second hand on the larger S107D, but I love the size of this S108D. So if they ever make a third one that's the combination of these two, that would be the watch for me. So there you guys have it, the Casio EFR-S108D, aka the smaller Sapphire Casio. So that will do it for this video. However, and you should know if you're a longtime viewer of this channel that this is coming, part of the reason I got this watch is because this will be the next challenger on the Casio Edifice Showdown against the reigning champion. So tune in next week for that episode because you are not going to want to miss it. All right, I'll leave you there. As always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, please subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.